When I first got asked by CCC to participate in something so amazing, I feel so honored because they picked me, and I'm kind of glad that because I'm bilingual and I know a lot of merchants in Chinatown. So the whole process is very smooth, and I explained to them that Dick Evans is a well-known photographer, and in his eyes, to see Chinatown is quite different. Yeah, so I was very, very proud, and I'm so glad during the whole process. I was really happy and excited. Thank you. Chinatown is such colorful and vibrant city, in San Francisco, an area, and there's a lot of tradition. And seeing this book make you want to come back to Chinatown, although some business will never be there again. But you're seeing all these people, the lives of the Chinese people, the community, the tradition, and all those things really, it's like a little village, and we started being united, and the community is very strong. And I think with this book is really gonna have a great comeback for Chinatown. Actually, I really like the baby party with the red envelopes, and then it's such a tradition with the baby party and the wedding, and that day is taken at the Far East Cafe, and Far East Cafe is also one of my favorite places because it's very historical, and I was really glad to see the whole family. It really bring back a lot of love and warmth with the Chinese tradition. A lot of my friends are really amazed and find it so incredible that through their eyes to see Chinatown, because we're in Chinatown all the time, we never see the vibrancy like how Dick Evans see it through his lens. There's some images that sometimes I think I missed it, and in this book I saw a lot of images that I might not aware of it, and then now I see how beautiful and how colorful Chinatown really is.
I was actually born only 3 blocks away on Beckett Alley, and grew up there. And when I was 10 years old, we lived in an apartment house on Powell and Clay, where Dorothy Toy also lived. And Dorothy, of course, is the person that I danced with and travel with during my dance career. And she's the one that sent me to ballet school at the age of 10. So she sent me to her ballet teacher, and that's how I grew up in Chinatown. When I heard I would be in the book, I was super excited and, of course, very honored. And the Grand Avenue Follies, we just couldn't believe it when we opened the book and we saw our pictures on page 92. And it's very exciting because most of the Follies actually grew up in Chinatown, so it was so nice. The book is actually going to show a lot of people that there is a community here in San Francisco that exists, and that when we are just not all about Chinese laundries and Chinese restaurants. And there have been a lot of accomplishments here in Chinatown, and people continue to live in Chinatown, which you brought out, which was so special. I really connect to the chapter that you talked about, the single room occupancies, because you talked about how the ladies would go downstairs at 5 o'clock, bring their shopping baskets and go up to Stockton Street to pick up vegetables and bargains, because my godmother used to do the same thing. And I actually used to go up to Stockton Street with her, and it is an experience, or was an experience that I will never forget. And you actually brought me back those memories, so I am very thankful for that.
The Chinese Culture Center got involved in the San Francisco Chinatown photography book through Dick Evans approaching us about doing a book about Chinatown, and we were excited to participate in the process. San Francisco Chinatown is in a sobering place after COVID-19. This book will really, we hope, will bring together people and the community together to celebrate the vibrancy, the culture, and the history of San Francisco Chinatown, and what a unique place it is. Not very many people know that San Francisco Chinatown is a living, breathing community. There are people that live here, there are small businesses, and it is a very vibrant community. And we hope that the book will showcase that living, breathing with all the community organizations that are involved to care for the community. For the San Francisco Chinatown book, the images that strike me the most are the photos of people, because Chinatown is such a vibrant place and it's composed of so many leaders and people who care about the community that it's really touching to see the photos of the people that make the community what it is.
My name is Aaron Peskin, and I am the elected supervisor or city council person for the northeast corner of San Francisco, which includes at its heart Chinatown. And I was first elected in the year 2000 and have served for most of the last 20 years as the supervisor for the northeast corner of the city. But my first experiences in Chinatown go back to when I was growing up. I was raised in the area, and my parents used to take me as a kid to Chinatown. But over the last 20 years, I've developed deep connections. As a matter of fact, when I looked at the book, I mean, how many people did I know? SRO residents who were in there, the Reverend Fong, the leaders of the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association, our district captain who is Chinese American and was actually, his family, the Yik family was raised in the neighborhood. So I've, it's always kind of a special time for me when I get to visit the neighborhood. I was honored. I mean, as somebody who cares deeply about the community, and it's a big part of my day-to-day life, I was honored. And of course, the first thing I did was I flipped through the book to find my picture. I just have to say, the book, because it really addresses every aspect of the community in a way that is not superficial, I think it's going to be a source of pride for Chinatown. It's certainly not the first book about Chinatown, and it's not the first beautiful picture book about Chinatown, but its timing is perfect. It really captures the essence of what is more than a neighborhood, but is just a remarkably intact community. And I know when it starts appearing in shop windows and people's, coffee tables, it's going to be a source of great pride. If there's any good news, Chinatown has amongst the lowest transmission rates, not only in the city of San Francisco, but the United States of America. And for a number of reasons, the Chinese American community was ahead of the rest of San Francisco in mask wearing and other precautionary measures. And so the good news is very few people have gotten sick. And the neighborhood continues to take care of itself, delivering meals to folks in need. But everybody's suffering. Businesses are hanging on by a thread. But Chinatown is a remarkably resilient community. And as is set forth in the book, I mean, whether it was the ghettoization period of the 1800s and the paper sons and paper daughters, or its resilience after the 1906 earthquake. So in many ways, I actually feel like Chinatown in some ways is going to be better off because it is so much closer knit and has so many institutions, nonprofits, family associations that are deeply committed to the neighborhood. As a matter of fact, relative to residential and commercial evictions, the rates in Chinatown are much lower than the rest of the city because so much of the building stock is owned by family associations that are not going to displace people who can't pay the rent in whole or in part because of COVID. So, I mean, look, this is like the most miserable time that any of us can imagine, but my hopes for Chinatown are higher than the rest of the society.
My connection with Chinatown started when I first immigrated to San Francisco Chinatown when I was 7 years old in 1994. It was, a move that my family decided really last minute, and I've lived in Chinatown ever since then. Went to an elementary school right on Broadway Street, and then Marina Middle School within about one bus ride away, and have lived in San Francisco ever since then. I think the book, and this is part of my personal story too, symbolizes kind of, I think, the Chinatown community. It's in San Francisco. It's actually very unique in that it's really grounded in the people and the merchants and the nonprofits that have developed over the years in Chinatown. And the book really shows that kind of relationship and really grounded in displaying the people who are the essence of this whole community that has lasted over a decade. I think the one picture that triggered the most memory isn't even a picture that's triggering an old memory when I was a child, but more it was the graffiti, not the graffiti, the mural on one of the streets with the pig and the monkey king. It symbolizes the story of the monkey king, but I thought that was a really not triggering, but it's really interesting for me because that mural itself triggered a lot of negative feedback from the older generation in Chinatown. But for me, I think it symbolizes the changes and the coming together of the younger and older generations that is Chinatown. And as a person who's a Chinese American who grew up in Chinatown, I feel like Chinatown, San Francisco stories, very similar to my growing up stories, always finding the balance between the Western approach to things and also keeping the tradition of the Chinese culture. And that mural meshing with the old story of the Monkey King, putting a kind of modern twist to it, and then causing a gossip and feedback amongst both the older generation and younger generation is something that really brings back memory and just reminds me that Chinatown is always evolving and always looking a way to balance what they want to keep as a tradition, but also moving forward and trying to modernize and keep up with time. When I first opened the book, I think the one thing that captured me is the fact that every single picture is mostly of people. I think a lot of people find beauty in nature, in paintings and all, but for me, I think people is really the spirit of this community, and to highlight people doing day-to-day things, just walking down the streets or managing their own business, that is beauty for me, and that's why.
My first reaction to being invited to participate in the Chinatown Book, I'm super excited and I feel thrilled because it's kind of reminded me of a very personal story that I want to share today. And 14 years ago, when I was studying in Michigan State University, and I got a used car and went broke during the bad weather. And I took the car to the car shop. The mechanic told me it's the wire engine chewed down by a mouse. And I shared this story back to my classmates. And so one of them, in an unintentionally, very jokingly way, asked me, Lele, did you park your car in Chinatown? So that was my first year to the States, and I feel disconnected that way. And that's not the China I grew up with. So being part of this book is giving me the opportunity to retell the story of this evolving Chinatown and evolving Chinese American community. And it's a symbol of the evolving culture and the compass for the future. My first reaction to the book is I feel this is a compass for the future that connecting the past and current and our future generations. To understand this, there's a shoulder they're standing on, the generations of immigrants that's working very hard to establish and build this heritage we're feeling proud of. Definitely, it's retelling and rebuilding the image of the beautiful Chinatown and re-enhancing the accepting culture of San Francisco. Besides my daughter's picture, the face-changing one that reminded me of a very enjoyable dining experience in Yuan, the restaurant. That was actually where I met the performer, and actually I invited him to one of my company's Chinese New Year event to perform. And that's where actually I met Deck, who took the picture of my daughter.
The walk shop has been in Chinatown for 53 years. When I came to San Francisco and Nixon had gone to China, everybody was interested in Chinese food and how it was prepared, how they served 500 people in the big hall in Beijing, 10 delicious different meals all served hot at the same time. How could they do it? Well, it was done because they cook with a wok. They called it a wok at that time, but we anglicized it and called it a wok. And so the wok shop was established because so many Westerners and all were very curious about that, because they knew it had to be a very special type of a cooking vessel. And so I decided to introduce them to the wok, which was available in Chinatown, but only in the Chinese grocery stores, where maybe a Westerner would feel a little intimidated walking into a Chinese grocery store at that time, 50 years ago. Number one, because of the language barrier. Number two, because they had mostly Chinese groceries, and then the woks were tucked way in the back. So it was a little intimidating for them to ask about a wok in a Chinese grocery store. So I decided to introduce them. At that time, I had a gift store, sold a lot of porcelainware from Hong Kong, and we weren't trading with China at that time. So I thought I'd have a few woks to introduce the Westerners about this very incredible, very different type of cooking pan. And they were so curious, and they just all wanted to purchase it and try it. First of all, because woks are not expensive. They're very affordable, and they are very versatile. So Westerners were not at all hesitant to try it and buy it. Aside from walking through Chinatown, this is the next best thing. It's like a walk through Chinatown. Everything about Chinatown, so colorful. The true life and the true flavor of Chinatown is in this book. Everything was covered, from the dining halls to the lion dance scene, which is so picturesque and colorful, and the children that do the lion dances, just they love it. It's their exercise, and it's making a lot of noise, and it's jumping up and down, and it's attracting crowds, and they're in their element. It's all the young kids just love to join the lion dancing troops, and where they learn how to lion dance. Well, right now, when they come to Chinatown, they fall in love with it. It's very quaint. It's the only Chinatown in the United States that has preserved its real, true culture. So they want to take a bit of Chinatown with them. It's all here. It couldn't be done more beautifully and more complete. Everything has been covered in this book. I just love it and can't get enough of it. Just leafing through it all the time, and it just brings back memories of Chinatown that people can have and preserve. What a beautiful coffee table book.
San Francisco, Chinatown. Congratulations, everybody!
Chúc đại ca新年快樂，身體健康，步步高升。